Good evening, Cheese Room, and welcome to our Wednesday night rambling show. It feels like it has been an eternity. I've been travelling around Europe in a camper van, causing all sorts of problems, nearly crashing several times, but I'm back, and I'm pleased to be back on this Wednesday night show with the two normal guys in HG and Gibbo. HG, how have you been?
I've been really well, actually. We've had some really good late summer weather here, which has been nice, but my shoulder is almost back to normal. School feels decent. I'm in a good mood.
Yeah. I mean, the last time I saw you, HG, you was making all sorts of weird noises in the green room, so you can see you're a lot better now.
Oh, yeah, the worst thing ever. I can't describe how painful it was, but it's really nice to be back.
Good. And Gibbo, are you still riding a positivity cloud, or you?
As positive as you're going to get from me, mate. Yeah.
Good.
Now, it's nice to get the gang back together, isn't it? We're all here, brilliant. Yeah. Plenty to talk about. Looking forward to getting stuck into it with you two boys.
Good, excellent. Well, there's lots of stuff to talk about. We've got a really interesting conversation and debate to be had tonight. And I know that Gibbo and HG have got some interesting views on these things. But before we start, I think it's important we make comment of and discuss the very recent passing of Pete Hain. Pete was a lifelong supporter of Spurs and a member of the Supporters Trust. And he's appeared on the Cheese Room to talk about the Trust work. Whilst I never had any direct contact with Pete, I did follow him via social media and did see some of the great work that he did and heard him on several pods. I think no one can deny that he worked really hard behind the scenes for the betterment of the supporter experience. And even in the last few months when his illness was known, he continued to lobby the club about a numerous number of supporter issues. So our thoughts here at the Cheese Room are with his wife, Jill, family and friends. HG, I understand you may have been on a pod with Pete at some point. Your thoughts and experience of Pete?
I feel like anyone who sets them aside that much time of their spare time to help the club, help the supporter experience of the club, like whether you agree with everything that the trust has done is irrelevant. The fact that someone is willing to say, this club means so much to me and I want to make it a better thing for everyone, then they deserve a huge amount of credit. And it's a shame. It's a massive shame that these things happen in life, but the club is poorer without him, frankly.
Yeah, agree. Gibbo, agree with that?
Totally, mate. There's not a lot I can say. I never met Pete. My only experiences of Pete have seen the stuff he's put on social media, listening to him on pods when he spoke about Spurs. And for anyone who hasn't heard stuff that he's done before, there's a pod called Life Goals with Theo Delaney, which was one of the last ones I heard that he was on, and it was fantastic. So anybody watching, go and give it a listen. But totally agree with HG. The club will be a poorer place without someone like Pete around. Yeah,
100% agree. Before we get into the running order for tonight, as always, please do like and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds just to press that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Good content goes out Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays pretty much every single week. And if you're lucky, you'll see myself, HG or Gibbo, not only on the Wednesday night show, but potentially across the Monday and Friday shows as well in the coming weeks. So please do like and subscribe. There's only one place to start, HG. Liverpool, VAR. The audio.
I somehow knew you were going to say that.
Well, I think it's been an interesting week. I mean, there's lots to talk about around this. Obviously, Klopp's response and Liverpool's general response to the whole thing, I think, is interesting in itself. But the VAR audio was released this week. Have you listened to it, HG? What was your thoughts?
It's funny. So I listened to it initially, and I had the video on. So I'm watching the explanations that the PGMOL had beforehand, and then it started, and I was like, "This is mental." It feels like 3 drunk men in a room. Only one of them is actually sober, and the other 2 are too busy congratulating each other on doing a good job. But there seemed to be so little order. That was in my head. I had imagined a few swear words. I had imagined what it might sound like. And it was nothing like what I'd imagined. It was so much worse. I'm genuinely amazed that is the standard of intelligence. Can I say that? It's a bit mean, but they just didn't seem particularly intelligent. And I realized that they're referees, and there's no massive barrier to being a referee. You just have to want to do it. But by the end of it, I was thinking, as a kid, everyone said only the weird kids want to be referees, right? The crazy kids go and goal, and the weird kids want to ref. And I just thought, no, that's too convenient. I fully believe now that is exactly what happens, and that I almost want to hear what the other referees sound like. I want to know how bad they all sound if that is the standard that we're used to.
I think it's interesting, HG, isn't it? And Gibbo, because if you remember, not too long ago, I'm sure you guys remember, there was that clip from the Australian referee. Do you remember that was using VAR and how he was having his communications with the VAR?
Yeah, that was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. And how good and how crisp it was. And it was a really good example of how it's done well. Then you almost get to the whatever that was that we heard in our VAR. I mean, it just goes to prove the point. It's not the tech, is it? It's the way we're applying it. It's inept.
No. When they explained before they showed the video that the referee doesn't hear everything that is being said, he only heard the things that are for him. How would I know who is who? Like, even when it said with the subtitles, this is the VAR, this is the AVAR, I didn't know which one was which, and it was nonsensical. Like, in my head, it should be the VARs are talking with each other, figuring out what's going on, and then they tell the ref what happened. But it never really felt like that. It felt as if you had like all these voices going on, and every now and again, maybe the referee only said good process, boys, well done, and didn't say anything else. But at no point was I really certain who was having a conversation. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Gibbo, you're the geek, Gibbo. You look like a ref to me. So give us your referee view.
Mate, I'm going to make an admission here. I've not listened to the audio. I don't care. I genuinely don't
have
care.
to.
I couldn't care. I think they're pathetic.
Gibbo, honestly,
it's brilliant.
I think Liverpool are pathetic. That this whole experience must be an embarrassment on their club. They've lost the game. Shit like that happens to everybody, but it's just like I don't want to listen to it. Like you said, HG, I probably will at some point, and I should have probably listened to it because we were talking about it tonight. But fuck them. I know that. Sorry, that's our rating gone down. But I don't care.
I mean, what's interesting, HG? I'll put this to you, HG, just because Gibbo's not listened to it. Yeah. But the bit for me that I thought was absolutely phenomenal was the bit at the end when I can't remember that word in Gibbo. I don't know if you've got it. I'm trying to find it now. Where he says, "Good process, lads. Well done," or something like that. I've seen some
brilliant writing of it, and I've seen bits like where they've said "good pro." I don't know how it went down. Yeah. I've seen where they've said they must have been patting each other on the back, saying "good process" or whatever.
Like, seriously, Gibbo, like, I could sit here and spend 5 minutes trying to explain just how bad it was, and it won't ever do it justice. Like, it genuinely felt like three blokes who have had too many drinks in a pub. The only one who felt like he knew what he was doing, they seemingly have an operator for the tech. So the two refs are basically just watching the game, but it was like they were watching it as if they were reffing it. So the first thing you hear is like, oh, they're both holding each other. I don't watch a football match as if I'm commentating. So why are these referees watching the game as if they're as if they're reffing? They're not. Yeah. Just watch the game and do what you need to when you need to. It felt like the world's worst buddy movie. If it was like referees, like a referee watch along, it was terrible.
Are we surprised? The standard of officiating in this country is awful. Are we surprised by any of this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was. I just thought I knew. I didn't. I think a bit like HG, you touched on it. I didn't expect it to be as comical, as farcical as that. I thought there would at least be a bit of order to it. You know what I mean?
I bet they're sat there in their kit, mate. In that,
there was no.
In that
There was well, it probably yeah.
They show up to work in their uniform.
Yeah, I think for me though, it's the fact there's no hierarchy to it. I think that's part of the problem HGI got from it. No one really knew who was in charge. Like I think the guy you just talked about, the technician, was the only one that seemed to apply a bit of common sense. He was saying you've got to roll, stop play, pause play, etc. And the others were just like, no, we can't. The rules say this or the rules say that. It's just a weird thing. I mean, looking back on it, obviously we got the better of that. We ended up benefiting, didn't we? But if it was the other foot,
but you know what I mean? Like if you and I were watching it, we'd be sitting there watching the game going, oh, that's onside. Because you knew instantly. You didn't even need the lines to go on. You knew it's onside, it's a goal. That's what we would say to each other.
Yeah.
And yet the referees don't say that to each other. They're more interested in referee speak of like, the kick point. What you mean that when the bloke kicks the ball, the kick point is here.
He looks onside to me.
Go on,
You'd be saying that, wouldn't you? He looks onside to me.
Yeah.
HG. He look
absolutely.
The technology. Yeah, it's just like that's where they're sat there in their kit. This is the funny thing.
But even if let's say the referee can hear everything that the VARs are saying, right? Because apparently they can't, or I don't know. It's weird. They showed that they only hear certain things. But if I'm the referee, I'm listening to the conversation, I'm waiting for them to come to a conclusion, and I hear the conclusion, and then I do what I'm told to do, right? The idea that they only hear some things is insane to me. Like, it should be not necessarily a two-way conversation, but, like, why not? Like, the referee is the one who's doing it. Like, what do you want me to do? Is it a goal? Simple questions, right? Is it a goal, yes or no? And if they say yes, then you give the goal. And if they say no, then you don't give the goal. Like, it's like, I'm surprised at how dumb they sounded, because I can't believe that in an industry that's worth billions, that they allow games to be controlled by people who look like they can't tie their shoelaces. It's mental.
What do they say? Keep it simple, stupid, don't they? Just like, don't just make it easy. But cluster, absolute joke. Yeah, but it was in our favour anyway.
It did go in our favour, and to be fair, there's a comment here from Paul. He's absolutely right. The ref himself didn't do that bad at all. Like, you can say he made a mistake because he didn't send Curtis Jones off first time. I didn't think it was a red card first time, right? So I don't think that's a mistake. You've got a split second to look at it. You probably don't want to send it, to show the red card straight away. It's quite easy for the referees now to show a yellow and then wait for VAR to get involved. So I think, Simon Hooper, as much as I always do a file show impression whenever I hear his name, it's just, he wasn't bad at all. Like, Liverpool were on the end of some rough decisions, but they were the ones who perpetuated these rough challenges and stupid choices.
Yeah. If it had been the other way, let's say, for example, the goal was offside, but it got ruled onside and they got given the goal and we ended up losing the game.
Yeah.
It was us basically receiving it. Would you have expected Tottenham to have released a statement?
I would have hoped we would. I genuinely mean this. Like, we've been watching football I've been watching for a long, long time, watching football, and stuff like this happens all the time. And you sort of like, I'm not a fan of VAR. It's never going. But for me, it's crap and it's annoying. But after you just got to let it go. It happens. It happens all the time. It's been happening all the time. And I just think I would have gone, just let's move on. Just let's learn. If the best thing that can happen is that the powers that be get their heads together and sort something out for the better of the game. But all this faffing about it, like, at some point you just got to let it go. I know people have a joke. They go, "What about Pedro Mendes? What about the Champions League and all that?" But really, we just move on from that, don't we? I do not. It's the fuss they've created about it. But one point, I don't know if you all agree with me. Klopp knows exactly what he's doing. How many 50-50 decisions will go in their favour now because they've kicked up such a stink over it? I wonder if that's the reason they're doing it. because it's not going to get replayed, is it? They're not going to get any points back. They're talking about sporting integrity. No. If it was the other foot, they wouldn't care.
And I wrote on my Facebook page that with their initial statement that as much as it felt a bit overly worded, I didn't mind it. The idea that actually we want to improve VAR, all of us want VAR to be better than it is, because every club knows what it feels like to have a bad decision. So we all want to see it improve, whether it's faster decisions, whether it's, like in my case, I'm a big thing that if you need the lines, they're onside. Right? If you can't tell by looking at the screen, then you just let it be as if it's onside, right? That would save a bit of time. But it's what Liverpool have done today seems far worse. I didn't mind the initial thing. I thought it was a bit, they didn't need to say we're looking for, was it resolution or escalation? And I think that maybe even Daniel Levy would have been the type of guy to say, hey, we recognize, we might have released a statement. And we might have said, hey, we recognise there's been a mistake. We would like to make sure those mistakes don't happen again, which is not too different from what Liverpool said, but a similar idea. But then today, after the audio was released, I mean, the audio was so horrific, it made it pretty clear that, like, those guys, if there was a massive conspiracy, they would get it wrong. If you paid them to vote red, they would vote blue. I don't trust them to do anything. And so the idea of a conspiracy was blown out of the water because I hate to say it, but they didn't seem that smart.
But can I just say, and I know it's not sportingly or gentlemanly, but I genuinely mean fuck them. They've had that many decisions go from over the years. They've had that many decisions and VAR decisions go in their favour, and they genuinely have. They've lost 3 points to us. They are an extremely good team. They will be at the top end of the league, no doubt. And they will probably finish above us. I'm glad we beat them. And I don't care that it was because it's them. I genuinely don't care it was dodgy. They've had enough luck. And talking about sporting integrity, where was theirs when like Wolves, was it last year? Wolves had a perfectly good goal disallowed against them, but for some reason the cameras never worked properly. If they're worried about sporting integrity, get everyone involved and say, how can we make this thing better? I genuinely mean it. Bollocks to them. I'm glad we beat them, and I'm glad it was a dodgy goal.
Yeah, well, Klopp's come out today in his press conference and essentially said he feels there should be the game should be replayed. I mean, HG, how would you feel if Premier League buckle and give them the replay?
I part of me would be tempted to say, no, we're not doing it. And if you want to give us a 3-0 defeat, we'll take it. Like, we make the point. Like, there is also a part of me that says, like, when stuff like this happens, you know, when Arsenal, you know, postponed the North London derby because they had like one COVID person or whatever it was. Yeah. And then when we play the game 3 months later, we thrash them 3-0. And like part of me is hoping that would happen. But I'm not being funny. That Liverpool side is really good. Like, I didn't think we were going to beat them. If we played tomorrow, I don't think we would beat them. I mean that, like, Liverpool can beat anyone, and as we know, they may well have done when it was 11 versus 10. I mean, seriously. Yeah. But right now, I'm over it. Like, I think the Spurs said today they wanted to focus on the Luton game. I want to focus on the Luton game, and Liverpool, what they've done today, like. I genuinely defend Liverpool a lot of the time because I do like the city. I like going there. And I know that lots don't, right? So I'm very much on my own. But I can't defend what's happened today. Like, everything that I've heard about Liverpool over the years, and, you know, I don't live in England, so I've not been there in a very long time. I don't have to deal with Liverpool fans like you guys do. And we all grew up at a time when Liverpool were the best team. So we all know loads of Liverpool fans. But I've never had to deal with it quite in the way that I've seen. Like, I had a Liverpool fan sending me abuse to my Facebook page this morning, and I'm like, really? Is it worth actually sending a private message to someone just because they're a Spurs fan to tell them that they're a bleep bleep bleep? I don't understand that. I really don't. I get that there are various reasons why Liverpool feel the way they do towards the rest of the country, and some of it I might agree with. But there's no excuse for what happened today. Absolutely not.
It's pure arrogance, mate. It's pure arrogance. What makes them think about replaying the game? Just the goal was disallowed and it was completely wrong and it was absolute shambles. Doesn't mean they'd have beat us. We could have gone on and beat them because of the way the game was 4-1. I mean, Klopp came out today, didn't he, and said that Jota got sent off for not touching Udogie once. It's just petty. It's just sheer arrogance. Like, I see that they tried to get Curtis Jones's red card overturned, and that failed, didn't it?
Yeah.
So they've gone all quiet about that because they've gone all sheepish because they know it was a nailed-on red card. It's just a complete arrogance of them and how they think, this game should be replayed. We want a big fuss made about it. We've had one bad decision go our way. There's an agenda against us. Just do one.
Yeah, I mean, go on, Craig.
Sorry. No, I was just going to ask you, HG. I mean, this guy, DDMK-THFC85 makes a really interesting point, doesn't he?
Well, I mean, if an apology is what's required to have a game replayed, the idea of ever replaying a game because the referee made a mistake, whether it's with VAR, whether it's without VAR, like, it's going to be humans that are running it. So we can argue till we're blue in the face about whether the system is right, about whether the humans are smart enough, but you don't replay a game because someone made a mistake. Because, like, I genuinely feel this way. Had it stayed 1-1, we wouldn't have heard any of this. Liverpool would be lauded about, 9 men holding out for a point. Would have been a really good result for them. They'd have been, look, you can't beat us. We're still unbeaten. But because one of their own made a mistake and they lost, it's suddenly, we'll focus on the thing that wasn't our fault. Because let's face it, Curtis Jones being sent off and Diego Jota being sent off and Joel Matip scoring an own goal were all their fault. There wasn't anyone else that involved in those decisions. It was all their fault. And like it might be a joke or something you hear all the time that they're always the victim. Sadly, that's exactly what they've done this time. And I genuinely I don't like nailing someone based on something that's happened. But this time they have acted like the stereotype. They really have.
But instead of talking about all that nonsense they're churning out, why don't they? Let's all get together. In the case of sporting integrity, so everything works out well. Let's all get together. Let's get all the clubs together, Spurs who were involved in that and all the other clubs because we want to make it better. And let's talk to the bodies involved and decide how we can make it better. And that isn't acceptable. And we don't want that to happen again. Yeah. Like you said, HG, just sit there and say to them, just talk in normal language. Just actually talk and get things done. You know what I mean? You don't have to talk out the manual, out the refereeing manual. You don't have to use all your special words. Is it a goal? Just keep it simple.
Yeah, referee Klingon. That's what it was. It was referee Klingon.
But just let's all get together and make it better. Mistakes have been happening in football for years. Not one game's been replayed because of it, has it?
I think I remember an FA Cup tie maybe 20 years ago between Arsenal and someone, and there was a goal, and they decided to replay it. But again, that was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really remember exactly what happened, but I remember there was some kind of replay because of it. But this time, like, again, I mean, I think they talked about it on Sky. Like, had they gone to Ange at half time and said, "Hey, look, we've made a mistake," then maybe Ange, he might have said, "You know what? There is a mistake. We'll give you the goal, and we'll start the second half at 2-1. I mean, that could have happened, but because the rules say that they can't go back, no one really said anything. So, of course, by this point, both teams know that there's been a massive mistake, but massive mistakes have happened before, and you just play the game, right? And as I said, at 11 versus 10, as it was at half time, I personally believe Liverpool were well in that game, right? It wasn't a guaranteed home win. It became more of a guaranteed home win when, 1, Jota got sent off, and 2, Klopp took off all his strikers. Right? Once Salah and Diaz went off, it was basically attack versus defence, and their defence couldn't do their job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think we're all in agreement. Then we don't see a world where the Premier League grant the replay.
No, not a chance.
No. I mean, I'd be interested to know what would happen to everyone that bought a ticket. So they automatically get a free one for the next game if they did.
It'd have to be played behind closed doors when Liverpool have got a fully fit squad.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair, would it?
The league season ends the middle of May, and Liverpool declare who wins at the end of May. Is that how it's going to work from now on?
I did wonder whether the load behind the replay wasn't necessarily about the points. It's more about the ban for the 2 players getting dropped as a consequence. Because if you scrap the game, then the red cards don't count, do they?
No, that's also true.
Yeah. Just another super chat. Sorry, another super chat by DVMK THFC85. Thank you for that, mate. Really appreciate that. What a world that would be.
Yeah, they'd have to blame Darren England. Not nothing to do with Spurs.
The ultimate now would be, and it's going to be really hard, the ultimate would be to go up to Anfield and beat them up there. They'll be, when we go up there, the crowd will be hostile. It'll be, remember what happened at the Spurs stadium, and it'll all be like, oh, we'll get revenge. And that, to go up there and turn them over at Anfield when we barely ever win there would just be brilliant. Like the pot of piss would be on boil, wouldn't it? It'd be on like full steam ahead. That would make my season. That would be amazing.
If that happened as DDMK is predicting, I wouldn't want to open your Facebook page, HG. Your emails will be absolutely carnage.
You know what? Weirdly enough, if that was to happen, I obviously wouldn't care. The idea of Spurs winning anything, winning the league by a point, I'd take winning the championship by a point right now. Liverpool fans have talked about how there was a decision like last year that cost them, or 2 seasons ago, and that they probably would have won 5 out of the last 6, or if the refs hadn't got involved. Do me a favour. Like, every fan remembers the bad decisions against their own team. We don't remember the ones that have really gone our way. We might remember this one because of the song and dance made about it. But generally speaking, I think there was one game when Didier Zakora got away with something, or Lo Celso got away with the stamp in one game. Those things kind of come to mind. But otherwise, you just get on to the next game. Like, these things happen to everyone. Move on.
And you know what it's taken away from, HG? I mean, obviously I don't like Liverpool. People who will watch this will obviously know that. But they are a really good team. And Klopp is a really good coach.
Yeah.
And all this just detracts from that for me. It just makes them an embarrassment. And they are, like I said, they're excellent. I mean, going forward, like you said, they could have played with 10 men, and they're that like potent up front. They could have still beaten us. And I've said, I think Klopp's an excellent manager, but they're just making themselves look ridiculous. And if it was to get replayed, they'd just be a laughing stock, wouldn't they? That is all people would get on at them about.
Yeah, let's say we replay the game and we win 3-1, or we win 2-1 again. Like, you want to have every time Liverpool lose, all the fans will be like, "Oh, well, you want to play us again next week?" Every time, or every time Liverpool win, you'll be like, "Oh, no, sorry, this one tiny thing went wrong. We deserved." You're never going to hear the end of it. Like, they have literally created this for themselves. The stereotype was there anyway, but they have fed it so much that no one is ever going to forget it, and it's crazy. It doesn't help anyone, including them.
No.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. All right, well, that's enough about VAR. Let's see what oh, by the way, just on VAR, they have come out, haven't they? I believe, and they've said there's 3 new rule changes they're making to VAR, isn't there now? Does anyone, you guys see that?
No.
Oh, right. Okay. Let me see if I can quickly find it.
3 changes. What, midway through the season changes, or for next year?
Yeah. No, I think from now.
Well, they do that all the time, don't they? Didn't they change the rule after that Dyer handball against Newcastle, where they scored in the last minute?
Here we go.
Changed that the day after.
So the Premier League sets to implement 3 substantial changes to the VAR process on the back of the controversial disallowed Liverpool goal at Tottenham. Having reviewed all relevant footage of the disallowed goal, bear with me 1 second. Where does it say?
Come on, Craig. This is poor planning, mate.
The changes will include an extra layer of checks to ensure that the VAR official will liaise with his assistants before relaying any decision to the on-field referee. A new cohort of dedicated VAR specialists will also be formed rather than referees switching between roles, while a review into officials refereeing games outside of UEFA and FIFA appointments will take place. So that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, but if the people are too dumb to understand the changes, you're going to get the mistakes again. Like, I genuinely feel that like they weren't incompetent because they made the mistake. I think genuinely they just are incompetent.
Incompetent,
right? And so the idea of like it's like getting annoyed when a snake bites you. Well, that's what they do, right? Like silly people will make silly decisions. So if there's a way of getting, I don't want to say educated, because educated doesn't mean much, but just smart, common sense people who understand that like it isn't just about having a laugh and a joke with your mates. I genuinely feel like most of the people watching, in fact, all of the people who are smart enough to be watching this show would have come and made the decision correctly. I genuinely, it's so impossible to do it the way that they did it. To be so unaware of what's going on around them and just being happy that like it feels like when you go shopping in is it called Aldi, right? In Aldi in the UK, right?
Yeah.
You go shopping in Aldi and they get paid on how quickly they can scan your stuff, right? And they're very good at it because they know they get timed on doing this. But they've done it so much that it's fine, and it doesn't matter if they get it wrong too much. Right, but in a $1 billion industry where goals don't happen that much, and VAR might get involved 5 times a game on average, maybe. Like again, you've got one job and you don't do it very often. It shouldn't be difficult to find people who can concentrate to be able to do it. I mean, like it's absolutely mental to me that they were unable to follow whatever the process is. I don't think they could follow it now because of what I heard in that audio.
I mean, it's just in a sad way. I mean, a lot of people might disagree, but VAR's here to stay, isn't it? I don't like it. It takes away. There's lots of things it takes away from. And I heard this was on another pod. I heard this, so these aren't my sort of thoughts, but that Ange Postecoglou doesn't celebrate a goal or think about celebrating it. Or admitting that the goal's in, getting that feeling that we've scored a goal until the ball's on the centre circle. I heard that he said that, and that's really sad, isn't it? And that's what it's come to, just like not knowing whether to celebrate goals and enjoying that moment. And so they've taken that away from us, and now now it just it's fucking up all the time and making mistakes. It's just a poor. It's just a poor part of our game for me now. I know it should be used for the greater good.
But like when it came in, was it the 2018 World Cup was the first one where they really used it? Right?
It was good.
Exactly. And if I watch German football, it feels like the application is slightly different. Like every country can use it how they want to. And sometimes I feel like fans in England, they want it to be used more because, that was a free kick that shouldn't have been given. VAR should have said it wasn't a free kick, or that corner shouldn't have been a corner and they scored from it. Like, I'm happy that VAR get involved in the few things they get involved in. But when they do it, they have to be smarter about it. Like I see the comment from Phil that these guys did make the right decision. But if you can't get that across, if you can't understand where you're working, then it doesn't matter. It's like I always used to think that when George Bush II was in charge of America, right, and everyone around the world thought he was a moron, right, and he could have told you that 2 + 2 is 4, and you'd have questioned it because you're like, it doesn't matter what you say. That's how I've got now. Like when I listen to those two, it's like, well, I don't really feel as if I can trust that you really know what you're doing, even if you get the right answer. And it has to be better than that.
Yeah. I mean, they probably get better results. Sorry, Craig. They probably get better results if you've got goal line technology, like Phil's put in the chat there. If you just had a bloke mic'd up to the ref with a little screen in front of him in the stadium, he'd go, "That's offside. That's that." Literally, just tell them straight away, and then they went and had a look and got on with it. Apart from they've got like HG says, they've got this truck or whatever parked up somewhere, and they've got their full kit on, socks pulled up to their knees. Do you know what I mean? With their Sambas on, because they're inside, or their Crocs, whatever they want to wear, just spouting a load of nonsense and making shit decisions.
Why didn't the Premier League accept the automated offside system? Do we know? We got any inside it? Do we know? Has anything been reported on that? Because that worked perfectly fine, didn't it?
Yeah, it depends on how much of a conspiracy theorist you are. I mean, that's the crazy thing. Like, the more you allow it to be put in the hands of humans, more people will think these humans might have been bought off in various ways. Yeah. And again, I've seen a few comments about the refs going off to Saudi Arabia or wherever it was to earn some extra money in the week. Yeah, true. And to be fair, Jack, like, mean, the whole world has followed that particular template. But no, it's as I said, like I am kind. I mean, we've spent over half an hour talking about it now. I'm kind of done. It's not what the show should have been about. I wish we weren't talking about it. But
let's move on.
If progress is what you want, then hopefully this will lead to a better VAR. But VAR is going to stay, and I don't mind that. Just needs to be done by people who I would trust to tie their shoelaces.
Competent people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, then moving on to the main body of tonight's show, we wanted to discuss Spurs' start to the 23-24 system under Ange Postecoglou. If I am right, I believe I am. This is our best ever start to a Premier League season. If we beat Luton at the weekend, it will be our best ever start to a Premier League season.
I love how if every Spurs fan is still thinking if.
Oh no!
Right, because we know it is still if as far as Spurs are concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what's interesting is there's this real good feel factor about Spurs at the moment, understandably so, because of everything that Ange is bringing in terms of attacking football, and we're seeing the results on the pitch. But roll back the year to a year gone by, and we was in HG pretty much the same position, weren't we?
Yeah, I mean, almost exactly the same position. So being the very poor PowerPoint presentation guy that I am, I have made a few slides. Right?
Get it on.
Here we go. Right.
Come on.
Here we go. Right. So look at this. Wonderful. I give myself a D grade for this effort, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You can see that 7 games in last season under Conte, we'd won 5, drawn 2. I don't remember the start being that good, if I'm honest. I really don't. I remember the football being boring, but I don't remember us getting that many points. But yeah, we scored 18, of which 2 games we scored 10. And then we got 8 in the other 5. So it was a bit...
Man U, didn't we?
Exactly. And then... but yeah, this season, you can see there's very little difference, right? Ange played 7, won 5. The goal difference is slightly worse this time around, but as Craig talked about, everyone feels better about it because we believe, rightly or wrongly, that not only is this one more sustainable, but we should actually get better. Right? I don't think anyone thought we were going to get better at being defensive and scoring on the break under Conte. I don't know why we never thought that, but we really didn't. But with Ange, there does seem to be this idea that we will. So that's the simple numbers. Moving on, these are the games that we played under Conte, the first 7 of last season, right? Hopefully some things will jog your memory. The really late equaliser at Chelsea was a bit of a fluke. And I think the winner against Wolves was from a corner that was flicked on.
Yeah.
And the Forest game, we were absolutely blasted for 87 minutes, but we scored right at the beginning and right at the end, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember the West Ham game, if I'm honest. I really don't.
Midweek. I think it was midweek, HG. I don't think we were very good. I reckon we played a midfield 3. Bissouma played in a midfield 3 and was only allowed to pass it backwards and sideways. So,
well, that's where all his teammates were either backwards or sideways. But yeah, like the Fulham game, I seem to remember that we were pretty good in that game, but Fulham scored at the end and could have got a late equaliser. And obviously the Leicester one looks fantastic, but it was 3-2 until Son came on and got a hat-trick, right?
Yeah.
And I think Leicester had a number of chances in that game. It wasn't the one-way traffic that you'd see when you see that score. But yeah, like 5 wins, 2 draws. It's a pretty good start, even though we all thought it wasn't sustainable. I mean, I am right in saying that. You both remember feeling that way, that we were quite lucky.
Yeah.
Right?
We spoke about it. I'm sure us 3, literally, I can remember being on a pod saying, shows, whatever, saying, this just isn't sustainable. Playing this way and getting these results isn't sustainable because the bigger teams will just keep playing football and trying to beat teams, and we're just sort of sitting here getting results. And you could see it gradually sort of deteriorating, couldn't you? I know, looking at that, 6-2 against Leicester doesn't mean, but after that, you could just see it deteriorate.
I mean, I remember being, obviously, I was at those home games, and I remember thinking this football is dire. Even the Leicester game, I remember coming on in the pod and saying, it's 6-2. It looks great on the face of it, but we were lucky, really. We were really lucky. We were so bad in that game.
Rode our luck, didn't we?
Yeah, massively.
In a bad way.
Yeah.
In a bad way, not like now.
No, and that's what's interesting, isn't it? I think, but I also remember, I think we were top of the league, weren't we, at that point last season? I'm sure we were top
must
of
have
the
been
league.
around it, if not exactly top.
Yeah.
But I don't like, and then we were top under the league under Mourinho as well, and I don't really remember that either. You know,
yes,
it's
and then we lost to West Ham, didn't we? Yeah.
But I mean, that Chelsea game, I remember Chelsea played us off the park. I mean, it was like probably Chelsea's best performance under Tuchel was that game. They absolutely destroyed Spurs, and we had no clue until I think Conte went 4-4-2 and basically said, right, we're just going to have a go. And then Højbjerg got one, and then Kane got the equaliser right at the end.
Yeah.
But Chelsea demolished us that game. And so it's probably only the Southampton game where we felt like we were much better.
Yeah,
that was a poor game.
From that lot, Sorry?
That was a poor game. That was HG. Like, I was there, and Craig was obviously there. And that felt like Spurs were playing a pre-season friendly. Southampton were that bad, weren't they, Craig? Did you go? Were you at that game?
Yeah, I was at the game.
Didn't we? Ward Prowse scored. Then once we equalised, and then I think Dyer scored, didn't he? A header as well. Yeah. It just got to a point where it was just easy. That they were a poor team, and people like Bevo who will be watching this. He was one of the people at the time who was saying we've beaten a poor Southampton team. We were lucky to, and people were getting on at him. But in hindsight, when you look at it, what a lot of us said about it, not being sustainable, it was true.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Antonio's first 7 league games, and I'm looking at that. 4 at home, 3 away, right? Seems 4 at home, 3 away. So then looking at this season's, stolen from Wikipedia, as I'm sure you're all aware. That's what we've got so far, and 4 straight wins, starting with a draw, a couple of 2-2s. And weirdly, those 2-2s were very similar because it was a penalty and a deflection that were goals against us in both those games. But I feel like those fixtures are harder than maybe the ones we had last year. I think those ones were just Chelsea away that felt like a really difficult game. Whereas here we've had Arsenal away, Liverpool at home, Man United at home, teams we don't usually beat at home, right? We hadn't beaten Liverpool at all. I'm not sure we'd beaten Man United until at the new stadium until.
No. We hadn't.
So there you go.
So I think we're 7 points better off, aren't we? And then if you take the fact we didn't beat Liverpool at home last season, we didn't beat Arsenal, we lost away, didn't we? And Manchester United, we didn't win either. So there's 7 points. We're 7 points up.
Yeah. And obviously there are games against Burnley and Sheffield United, and they're promoted teams, right? So you can look at that and say some of those games are easy. And I think certainly before the Arsenal game, everyone looked at those opening 5 games and thought, hey, Spurs have had a pretty cushy start. But we all thought, you have to remember, like Ange has just taken charge. So we looked at those first 5 games and thought, hey, if we don't get points, if we don't win a few of those, when the difficult games start, we're going to be in trouble. And Ange himself had said that we might have a few dodgy results early doors. It's kind of weird to think that one of those dodgy results is only a 2-2 draw at Arsenal. But that's basically what's happened. And so I look at that and I see, 4 away games and only 3 at home. That's a big difference. It's weird to think that, the next game is also away. So we're going to play 5 of our first 8 games away from home. And hoping that things go the way that the season has gone so far, you would expect Spurs to win that game. And so it's not even the style of football that is so much better. It feels as if the club is on a better footing and the performances are better. And I mean, how many of those results would you say flattered Spurs?
Well, I don't think any. I mean, the first half against Man United was tough, wasn't it? We weren't really in that game. We struggled a bit in that. They had lots of chances. Arsenal, we were away at Arsenal, so you expect to be under the cosh. Any team really expects to go there and be under the cosh first 20 minutes, half hour, don't they? So I don't think. So I'd say maybe the Man United game for a one half of football. But apart from that,
and this is the funny thing, like there are moments, like, it's not as if we outplayed all of those teams. Like, I will say that. Like, I think we took our chances against Man United. That was the big difference, right? And obviously the Sheffield United 2 goals in the last 3 minutes or whatever it was, obviously you could sit there and think that we fluked that one a little bit. And obviously the Liverpool game we've just spent 45 minutes talking about. So I get that maybe these 7 results aren't as good as the performances possibly suggest they should have been, right? Like, that we have been a bit fortunate and we've got a few points more than maybe we should have. Just like last season was true. The same was true then. But
HG, sorry,
go on.
Sorry to put in, mate, but for me, like the Arsenal game, we could have possibly pushed on and won that game, but because we had to make substitutions to key players, we sort of made ourselves worse. We killed any attacking threat we had, so we couldn't push on to win that game. If you get what I mean. And the same sort of with the Brentford game. When we have to make substitutions, we sort of like shoot ourselves in the foot a bit. You've got to make substitutions, but we kind of make ourselves worse by making the substitution. So, I think like the Arsenal game could have been better. We could have actually, if we had kept the right players on, or were able to keep those players on, we could have pushed on and won that game on the other side of the coin. If you get what I mean, to what you were saying.
I mean, I remember being disappointed after the Brentford game that we didn't go on.
Yeah.
And this is bearing in mind that we lost Romero after 15 minutes and he'd already scored. So there were things that worked against Spurs. But I remember thinking, was it 2-2 at half time? I think it was. And then the second half, there were no goals. That Arsenal one, like at half time when they'd lost, who is it they'd lost? I think they'd lost Declan Rice at half time to injury. And you looked at them and thought, Martinelli wasn't playing, that's a bonus. And Trossard wasn't playing. And you thought, this might be on here, right? Like, we could actually go on and win. And, without Romero balancing himself and having his arm in front of goal, we probably would have gone and won that game. But it's just, I think that the reason why we're all so happy right now is because, as I said before, we all know that what those 7 results are pretty much what we expect now, that kind of performance. And that maybe the results won't always be there, but the performances should get better as the players get more used to what Ange wants. And as I said, Ange says himself, judge me on year 2, right? Yeah. And we're 7 games in and we're already pretty happy with what's going on.
Yeah. We're hopefully, with what we're doing, like you said, HG, that's the biggest difference in it, that you can see that we're going to improve. We're going to go and get results, whereas under Conte, you felt like the results were going to stop, didn't you? But with Ange, we sort of feel like there's more to come. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah,
that's just the whole feeling about it is just more positive.
I mean, we talked about like Luton being the 8th game this season. Well, the 8th game last season was away at Arsenal, and we got steamrollered, where it was like 3-1, but should have been 5-0, really. And that felt like, okay, this is where Spurs actually are. Like, those games that we've had this season, like Man United felt like a big game at the time because we didn't really know they were going to be where they are right now. And the Arsenal game, we all know that Arsenal this season maybe aren't as good as they were at the start of last. But Liverpool, despite getting players sent off left, right, and centre, that to me, that was a massive, massive game because I genuinely thought that we would be lucky to beat them. That I thought we would struggle because I think Liverpool just have so much firepower, but we got through it. Yes, there are reasons as to why, and yes, all the rest of it. But when you're playing a very good side like Liverpool, and I don't feel that we were worse than them at 11v11. No. They may have had a bit more threat, but I don't feel like we were worse than them. And yes, Liverpool are pretty much a brand new team. They've retooled their midfield, and Spurs have, 5 or 6, 7 new players really to the ones that played last season. But both of those teams should expect to get better. And so when we do go to Anfield in May or whenever it is, mid-April, I don't know, I expect it to be a better game than we saw in those first 26 minutes when it felt like it was basketball, where both teams were just going on the attack and were willing to give up chances because we need to do that if we want to have overloads to score goals ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
No, quite. In terms of the sustainability, sorry, HG, our feeling that things can only get better now as we get at this point in the season. What do we put that down to? What gives you that confidence that things can only get better? And you alluded to the fact that perhaps some of the results we've been lucky, and some of the results potentially we got them late, the last minute winners and everything else in the game. What gives you confidence that we will get better?
I mean, two things really. One, that Ange himself believes it, right? And if anyone knows that his teams tend to get better, it's the man who controls pretty much everything. Mm-hmm. But two, it feels as if we've never actually played the best 11 we could. Like if all players were fit, I think Bentancur makes the side, right?
Yeah.
Probably ahead of Sarr. And if you're thinking about, Ange ball at its best to me involves, wingers who can go down the outside. And we haven't really had that too much. I think Perisic looked really good. We only saw, not even a full game, really, of Brennan Johnson going down the right. Not even that. Like we haven't really had a right-footed winger play down the right. Maybe Solomon for one game. But even he prefers to be down the left. So I think there are areas where that 11, whoever it ends up being, will get better than what we've seen. And that's avoiding the fact that these players, when they get more used to it, they should get better at it. Because again, like Postecoglou has said, he's not going to change his tactics for anyone. Like his players will get better at doing the thing he wants them to do, and that's what happens always. And so that's probably the biggest thing for me is that like Ange believes it. And we've got players to come in who can, in my opinion at least, do better than the ones that have played really well so far this season.
And we've still got good young players, haven't we? Because, my sort of point of view of that Liverpool game was just when I was watching it, we've got young players who are, we're learning how to play Ange ball, but we're still a little bit naive with the last ball or the killer pass or making the right decision. Well, that comes with time. With younger players, doesn't it? And when teams have played together longer and they're sticking to what they're doing, that will come. That's what happened with Liverpool. That's what happened with City under Guardiola. And I'm sure if we continue to do that, I'm not saying we'll go on to do what Liverpool and Man City have, but I'm sure if we continue and have people with the same mindset and the same degree of positivity that's going around the club and the same belief in what we're doing, then it will get better.
I think that we can all. Sorry, Craig, go on.
It's like, no, you go.
No, like I've seen through watching Spurs for the last 30 years that some players are on the same wavelength from day one. It's just a natural thing. Like even I've played with people where it feels like that, and I'm no great shakes at football, but sometimes you just click. And everyone talks about how Kane and Son are the best partnership in the Premier League history, blah blah blah. But it took them, 3 seasons to get going? 4 seasons? And that Kane and Dele actually felt like the natural partnership. Those were the two that really understood what each other was doing. And it took time for Kane and Son. And I remember talking endlessly about how I thought that Kulusevski and Doherty worked really well together. Just because it felt like a natural thing for those two, that Kulusevski liked to stay wide and Doherty liked to make the runs into the box rather than around the outside. We should realise who works well together. I thought that Perisic and Udogie had a natural partnership and worked really well together down the left. And we haven't really found that natural thing down the right. I hope that as things go on, that it's going to be Porro that makes the runs down the outside around Kulusevski and not Sarr, because we've seen Sarr a number of times this season end up in that position. And if it was Maddison there, you'd expect a good cross. But as good as Sarr is, that's not really his thing. But when we start figuring out who works well together, then it becomes almost like a tag team. Like you're not just putting 11 good players out there who can do it really well. You are maximizing those 11 players so they end up being a bit more than the sum of their parts. And that's cheesy and whatever. But I genuinely think that the best football teams have that. It's not just an understanding of being good at football. It's just knowing that, like with Anderton and Sheringham, those two just worked together and they were smart enough to realise it.
And Porro and Kulusevski, when I look at that, like what you're saying about Porro going out round the outside of Kulusevski, it should work, shouldn't it? Because Porro is a good crosser of the ball. He does put up, he is good on the ball, and he's quick, and he can get into those areas. So that should work, shouldn't it? That should get better, that partnership.
Yeah, and I even remember one time, this was early on against Liverpool, and I think Maddison had the ball in kind of the position where Sarr would be, and Kulusevski was kind of to the left of him. And Maddison played it to Kulusevski, who then played it onto Richarlison, who hit it over the bar with his left foot. And at that point, I was like, Maddison and Kulusevski as those 2 eights, if you're camped around the box, that works really well. You don't need Kulusevski cutting inside and crossing it, because we've seen that works once every 25 goes. It's not a consistent threat. But if you get Maddison and Kulusevski operating on the edge of the box, they both have the ability to play those passes through the legs into space of runners, where maybe Son only needs half a yard, but with either foot can find the bottom corner. That would work. And then you have more space for an extra attacker down the wing. And I know we've got a lot of injuries in wing areas right now, but someone like Bryan Gil down the left, I would be quite happy to see Porro almost be that right-sided winger, because he could provide the width. And if that means Emerson Royal plays, well, a lot of us thought Emerson Royal suited Ange Ball better than Porro did, right? And in the one game he started, he scored, and we weren't terrible in that game. So I still think that we have options, but it might mean that Kulusevski becomes an 8 as opposed to a winger, and Porro becomes a winger as opposed to an inverted fullback. And like, Ange is very big on having players who can do more than one role. And I think that, we're going to be there. These substitutions that we're going to be seeing, where we think, how is this going to work? I think we're going to see that it can work, because these players have the talents to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the point that gives me the biggest hope, is when I compare the start under Ange, it reminds me a little bit of, if you remember when Poch first came in, but just as it started to turn for Poch, he got that result, didn't he? That last minute winner. I can't remember the team now.
Villa.
It was Villa. Thank you.
Villa.
Yeah.
Gibbo knows.
Yeah. And I remember that I was at that game, and I remember thinking after that, you started to see the patterns of play and what he was trying to do and how he was implementing his stamp on this team. And I think what I see with Ange, he's almost fast forwarded that transition. He's come in, hit the ground running. He's got the patterns of play very well defined already. We're very clear. But I wonder how much of that is because the starting base is so much better. Because if you look at that team that Poch inherited versus to the team that Ange has inherited, the quality of the squad is undoubtedly a million times better. So you're working with better ingredients, you get better outcomes, don't you?
But Craig as well, I think when that happened as well, at that point, Poch got rid of a lot of players who weren't really buying into what he wanted to do. I think it got to a point just before the Liverpool game where he's like, look, we're on the verge here. I don't want him playing. I don't want him involved. This is my group of players. I'm going to put these young lads in. We're all going to stick together, and this is how we're going to try and get results. Whereas Ange came in and has done that from pretty much day one, hasn't he? This is how I'm going to do it. You're either on board or you're not. But this is the direction I'm going. This is the direction I'm taking the club. So you join in or you're on the outskirts. And he's done that from day one. And that's why it's working. It took Poch. I mean, it was the Adebayors and the Kabuls, wasn't it? And
that's right. Yeah.
Capoos and all those. And then he just decided to put them to one side. And he had a group of players who were all fighting for the same cause. And they became, like HG said, they became that season with like your Bentaleb and Mason in the midfield. They became greater than the sum of their parts, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I've seen in the comments people talking about obviously the under-21 players who are 8 games unbeaten, won every one. And players like Santiago looks like a real good two-way winger that Ange seems to like. And obviously Jamie Donnelly almost could be a Harry Kane regen because he's comfortable being the 9, but he actually likes being the 10 as well. And that I don't want to say that because you don't want to add that to him, but he looks good enough, right? He genuinely looks good enough. And maybe these injuries, as annoying as they are, we saw Donnelly on the bench against Liverpool. I'm sitting here thinking, we've got Højbjerg and Skipp who to me are basically the same player, really. They've got the same role in Ange's squad of being kind of that defensive midfielder if you need to make a change. I'd be okay if only one of them was on the bench and that we gave opportunities to players like Santiago and Donley and Soon-Sup Bell who fit what we do and are playing well and full of confidence. That, as much as you would like the senior players to be fit, I'm less worried about giving minutes to our academy prospects right now because they all seem actually pretty good.
Yeah, the fact that Solomon's injured, I'm not really that bothered by. Don't get me wrong, he has done all right, but I don't think he's any great shakes. I don't think, if one of these young lads comes in and hits the ground running and is confident and I don't think it'll be a massive downgrade to start off with, and they'll just get more experience. It'll benefit them. So you know what I mean? As it is, it does weaken the squad in a way. With it being like Solomon, I'm not really. It's a shame for him, but I'm not really too upset about it.
And it gives us the chance to see. I mean, like, I know Brian Hill isn't fully fit, but this is his time now. Like, this system suits him perfectly. So when he's fit, I have no doubt he will get 15, 20 minutes at the end of the game. Maybe he'll start one if he does well in those. Same is true of Lo Celso, who seems to be training again. Like, I think that Lo Celso, the system will suit him. Granted, I think it suits him more in difficult games. I'm not sure it would suit him if we're playing against a low block so much. But I do believe that, someone like Donley would be better because we know he can shoot. And Lo Celso gives me that vibe, but almost Dele Alli gave me that vibe of he's never really going to find the corner from outside the box. He might score you a goal, but shooting is not his thing. But Donley seems to be an attacker who can shoot and pass and is smart on the ball. And so, as I said, as much as it's annoying that we're losing players relatively frequently right now in attacking areas, we've still got options who I'm not sad to see. I think they'll do well.
And look, like I said earlier in the group, I don't really want to see Richarlison play on the left, but I think he could do a job there. And we've got Valise, if they trust him, we've got a young lad coming up front there as a rotation striker. So we have got options, haven't we? We're not really strong in depth, but we have got options. There's things we can do to change it up a bit if we need to.
Yeah, and we don't have experience. That's the thing. But I don't know. I know what Udogie is almost 21. I think he's 21 next month.
Yeah.
I don't think Jamie Donley is 19, 20. There's really not much difference age-wise. Yes, there is difference experience-wise because Udogie's played at least 2 full seasons of Serie A. But we have a young side that should grow together, and as long as the youth don't see themselves as inferior and truly believe that they belong at that level, which we've seen with players like Sessegnon. Sometimes we don't think they really believe it themselves. Yeah, well, yeah. Sorry, there are so many players we haven't talked about. That's the thing. I'd forgotten completely about Valise, and we only signed him. He's a summer signing. We should be excited. Yeah. And we're thinking I don't want to see Richarlison down the left. I really don't. I think the value he has for Spurs is as a central striker, whether it's as a super sub or as a battering ram or however you want to do it. That is what I see him as. I don't really want to see him, because watching him going down the wing is like watching me going down the wing. It just doesn't look natural. There's no skill involved. It's very much like I'm going to just push past you and see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So we've talked very positively about the start and our ambitions for the season. So I guess the question I'll ask you, Gibbo, is how far can we go this season? Can we?
Oh, mate. Obviously, I think it's going to be a very competitive league. I think you see that at the weekend. Villa, Brighton, obviously us against Liverpool, City losing. They're not going to do that too often. Arsenal are a good team. I think it's going to be extremely competitive. And it's just hoping that we can progress as we have been. I don't want to get carried away. I was having a little chuckle after we spoke about, it's Spurs and we got Luton. Just had visions of the 3 of us in our own front rooms being like a scene from Platoon when the 90th minute, do you know what I mean? Like falling on the floor, like, no, do you know what I mean? Why are you doing this to us? So just take it a game at a time, mate. And if we can improve, we're going to be up there. We're a match for anyone. We proved that. We're going to do what we're going to do, no matter where we play. So let's just enjoy it this season after we've watched so much crap. And like I said, get some sort of European football. But we're improving. And as long as we keep improving, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
Where we... Sorry, go on, Craig.
No, you guys, you're going to answer the question anyway, I think, HG.
I just feel that, like, with Spurs right now, do I think that we'll get hammered in every game? No. Well, I don't worry. I think we'll give a good account of ourselves no matter what. And that's nice. That's comforting. Yeah, we might lose 3-0. I mean, at some point, I'm sure we will lose a game quite heavily. Some team will take all their chances and we will miss all of ours. That happens to every team. I don't think City are as good this season as they were last year. It looks like Arsenal aren't as good this season as they were last year. Liverpool are rebuilding, right? Like if Liverpool get a true defensive midfielder in January, I worry, right? To me, Liverpool have everything but that. But yeah, like, you know, what counts as success? You know, at the start of the season when we did our predictions, some of us were thinking top half would have been good. Now it looks like, now it looks like a European spot we almost expect, right? It doesn't have to be a Champions League one. Even if Champions League ends up being top 5, I think all of us are thinking, Europe is going to happen. And not Conference League, like actual, decent level Europe. But the way that Man United have started, and they don't look like they're going to turn things around anytime soon.
No.
And Chelsea might get a little bit better now they've won a game, but there's no guarantee that's going to happen. And, it may only be 7 games in, but, they're playing catch up. And we are already moving at quite a pace. So, look, I still think that in theory, City, Arsenal, Liverpool are better teams than Spurs, and they should finish above us if all things are equal. But they're not. All those 3 teams will have Europe into the spring. Whether it's Europa League, Champions League, whatever, they will all have other games to play. Spurs almost certainly won't. We won't have any midweek games. And we've seen in the past that matters. So even though I know deep down that if everything goes our way, you could end up with another Leicester, I don't believe that. I didn't believe it would happen to Leicester, and I don't believe it will happen to Spurs. I do think that it's very likely that, when the end of March comes around and football really seems to matter, that Spurs may well be close enough to think, like on the 538 website, it will be around 10%. Right? Like we won't have a great chance, but it won't be, I think we've got Newcastle, Liverpool and Arsenal 3 games in a row at the end of the season. So it will be in our hands. I believe that, but it's one game at a time. Like if we beat Luton, we will probably, very, very likely go into the international break top, right? If Arsenal and Man City play each other and there's no winner, there's a good chance we'll end up being top. The 4 games we have between the October international break and the November one aren't the most difficult on paper. We've got Chelsea at home, which will be a big thing because of Pochettino, but Fulham, Palace, Wolves, if you're thinking of Europe, you want to win those games.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
I mean, Palace away is not easy, and I think it's a Friday night game, so it really won't be easy. But those are the games that if you want to be there or thereabouts, you do win those ones. Whether it's 1-0, defensive effort, whatever, that's what needs to happen. So Spurs are in a position and it's possible to dream, but right now I care about Luton. Everything else is...
We're going to improve as well, aren't we? I'm sure, I'm not saying we're going to make loads of signings, but I'm sure in January we will add to the squad. 1, possibly 2, but we will add. Bentancur will hopefully be back in the squad and fit enough to play by then. So, that's improving the squad again, isn't it? The only issue is, HG, African Cup of Nations. Because obviously we lose Bissouma and Sarr. But if Bentancur's playing, you can sort of say you're only really losing Bissouma from that midfield. But I think he's a big part of what we do. I really think when he starts playing, we start playing.
When is that? When is that?
Yeah.
Like
the middle of January, like the 10th of January to the end of the month, something like that.
They missed the FA Cup game.
So it's good.
Man U, Everton. Do we play at those?
We've got Man United, Tottenham on. Yeah, Man United away 13th of Jan, and then the next game is the Tottenham Brentford 30th of Jan. The next game.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be an FA Cup game in there, hopefully. But we have that silly 2-week pointless mid-season break. I just I think the good thing about there's a very good chance we're going to sell Højbjerg in January, right? I do think that's going to happen. But the good thing is that if Bissouma's away and Sarr's away, well, we can sell him on January the 31st. We don't have to do it January 1st. It helps the club to keep him around. And I've been a big fan of Højbjerg this season. I think when he's come on, he's generally made us better, whether it's in a defensive way or even in the moves to start the winner against Sheffield United. He was involved in the winner against Liverpool. Højbjerg is, I think, very important to what we need from our squad players right now. And I'd be happy if he stayed until the summer, if I'm honest. But if we are going to let him go in Jan, and we've got Bentancur, and we decide maybe, I would like maybe another defensive midfielder, if that's possible, because Bissouma seems to be the one. I think Sarr could probably do it. I think Bentancur could probably do it. But we are not in a bad position, because as much as we have a 25-man squad right now, and they're all named, Lloris, Dyer, Sessegnon, probably one or two more, could all go and we wouldn't cry about it, which means we've got space for any foreigners we might want. We've got space, the Portuguese winger Jota that was at Celtic. I think we all think there's a very good chance he might show up at Spurs in January. So, it will hopefully be, and I expect it to be, a position from strength, because our squad is not that bad now.
No, I mean, this is a worry, isn't it? Or is it a worry? And I've never even clocked onto this one, the Asia Cup. Which starts on the 13th of Jan or 12th of Jan, and it goes through to the final, the 10th of Feb. I mean, if Sonny and South Korea, which could go quite a way in that competition.
Well, they probably will, Craig. So I agree with you, mate, because Son is our biggest goal threat, isn't he? When you look at Richarlison, it's chalk and cheese when he goes on the pitch. I mean, I was saying just before that came up, Sarr's probably got a good chance going quite away, hasn't he, in the African Cup of Nations HG?
Senegal, yeah.
Senegal.
Expect him to do all right.
Who does Bissouma? What's Bissouma's nationality?
He's from Mali.
So I don't know how.
I don't know how strong they are.
No, I don't know how strong they are. So, but Son will be will be a bigger miss than definitely those two.
Hey, I definitely will be. I definitely will be cheering against Son in that Asia Cup. I mean, Spurs come first, right? And so as much as I want him to be happy as captain of his country, thankfully Klinsmann's in charge, so they might go home early.
I mean, I don't. It's quite interesting how maybe it's just me, but that's not clocked much airtime, has it? We've been talking a lot about the African Cup, but not really much about the Asia Cup. It's quite interesting, and
we won't be the only ones to lose players, because obviously Salah will be off with Egypt. So there are others that will be taken away from their clubs. But when you think about three of our best 11 right now, it's quite a big number.
Yeah. But if you look at that, just to I know we're looking ahead and we're talking about getting through Luton first. But if we talk about that United game, 13th of Jan, I think I said, potentially we've got those Bissouma, Sarr, Sonny, all out the equation for that Man United away. I mean, that's tough.
That's weakens,
Should we all get a collective COVID? Do you think that would help?
Maybe
that would really help. Yeah,
because we've all got a load of we've got a load of free midweeks between now and the end of the season, so we can
hopefully the game. Hopefully VAR will fuck up again and we can get the game replayed when they're all back.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, the earliest we're going to get Sonny back is end of Jan anyway, because that's when the group games, assuming they go out in the group stages, which is unlikely.
I think they'll go. I think they'll go quite far, won't they? HG.
I mean, you'd have to think so. I mean, obviously there are lots of Asian teams I don't know too much about, but South Korea tend to do quite well.
Yeah.
You'd expect them to do well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
let's not think about that. Yeah, let's not think about that. Come on.
Yeah. Anyway, back to no, it's been positive. I think that brings a conclusion, that segment of the show. I think it's been a really good, interesting discussion, and to compare the two contrasting seasons has been really, really interesting and fun. I think the other thing to talk about as we look to close out is today, HG, it's been announced that British Isles will be hosting Euro 2028. Great news.
Yeah, a choice of one, we're going to be picked. Yeah, like it's obviously exciting because, major tournaments are fun to be a part of, and especially when they're not, flung around the world in places that no one wants to go to, like Qatar. I mean, it's just not. It wasn't a great venue for a World Cup. I don't want to say too much about Qatar because I've never been, but it doesn't, like, you get excited about evenings in Seville or evenings in Rome.
Rio.
Maybe not so much Manchester, but we'll forget that for a second. But the UK is a relatively small country that's quite easy to get around, and so for football fans of any persuasion in Europe, that you can all go and you can spend a week and a half supporting your team in various places, and to have that, it's great. We'd all love to have a World Cup in England. I don't think that's really going to happen in my lifetime, sadly now. But a Euros, in many respects, is probably a bit more difficult to win. The standard of football might be better in general, and it's fun. I mean, at the very least, it's fun. We all remember Euro '96. We all remember, it felt like the first time. I mean, it's weird now to think back, but when the Premier League started in '92, football was a bit of an afterthought, right? If you were a football fan, you watched it. You had Sky. You might watch the games. But before that point, football wasn't on TV, really. Maybe one game twice a month. There was like the big match on ITV.
Yeah.
But then when Euro 96 happened and England did well and they played good football and the whole country was kind of behind them, and it felt like, now it seems really normal. But back then, that was the first major tournament where it felt like the entire country was watching. And it obviously helped that it was in England, but still, it was a massive summer. And we're going to have that again, right? And given the talent that England has, and I'm going to be biased for a second, given the talent that England has, you won't have a better chance, right? Like the players we have right now, like Bellingham and Foden and Reece James and all those players, they're all going to be 4 or 5 years older, prime of their career, mid-20s, 25 to 28. Yeah, you want to talk about dreaming about Spurs, like Jude Bellingham, I can see him lifting the World Cup. I can genuinely see that happening because he's that good, and English football seems to be producing that kind of player. I mean, like, you can play this clip in 5 years' time and laugh your head off at me. But
so are you saying it's coming home, HG?
No.
Are you saying it's coming home?
No. I'm saying that Jude Bellingham will be England captain for a decade.
Yeah.
Right? He's that good. And Jude Bellingham is I mean, I don't want to talk about multicultural England and face of the country, but the kid's 20 and he plays football as if he's 32. He sounds as if he's 42. I've never seen a football player like it because he's just so, like, I wouldn't give interviews as calm as he does. I wouldn't. But he feels born to be an incredible footballer. And no matter what you throw at him, he will take it on. He will be presenting, Football Focus or Match of the Day in his 60s like Lineker's doing it now. I genuinely think he is that good and that there isn't going to be anything he can't do. So it's nice to think that England, who have, for most of our lives, let's be honest, flattered to deceive, that the English press have built them up to be better than they ever were, it actually feels like we've got a team of footballers rather than a team of athletes, and I can't help but be excited. And maybe it's the World Cup in 26 that we win it and we come home as 28 as world champions. Who knows? But to know that we're going to have very good players in a home tournament, you can't help but be excited.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
I've just seen this. Sorry, I've just seen this comment about Southgate. Right, Southgate won't be in charge. Southgate will get the hook after next year's Euros when England go out, maybe at the quarters, maybe at the semis, and it will be someone else. I guessed earlier someone like Eddie Howe, who may not be in charge of Mega Bucks Newcastle by that point. Maybe he still will. I don't know, but. I feel like I genuinely can imagine Jude Bellingham lifting the World Cup. I really can.
Let's hope you're right.
Yeah, you got me all excited.
He'll be lifting it up.
About Spurs.
He'll probably lift it up as Quidditch. Jude Bellingham plays Quidditch on his holidays and ends up being the best in the world at that too. But he's just I don't know. If you were going to design a footballer, Jude Bellingham would be it. Genuinely, he's that good.
Bit like Build-A-Bear. Yeah.
Oh, as
Build a Bellingham. There we go.
Build a Bellingham. Yeah.
You never know. We might sign him next summer.
Maybe.
Oh, no, I mean, it's like I say this. I hope Jude Bellingham never plays in England apart from for Birmingham City. That's his team. I want every single England fan to view him as, we think you're great. I never want to see, you play for Liverpool, therefore we hate you, or you play for United, or you play for Arsenal, and therefore there are parts of the country that don't like you. Jude Bellingham left at 16, 17, whatever he was. If he comes back at 37, having won this, that, and the other, and only plays for Birmingham City, it's like the perfect career. It really is.
Stay in Madrid.
I genuinely hope it.
Yeah, don't disagree. It looks like Newcastle won tonight anyway by the comments. So.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Congrats. That's good because we need teams to win, so fifth becomes a Champions League spot.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. No, good. All right, anything else? What we talk about tonight? Anything else to talk about, lads?
Mate, it's past my bedtime.
So.
Yeah.
I'm running out of ideas. I'm running out of inspiration. Yeah, 4-1 HG. I think Man City won 3-1. Man City won 3-1.
Well, after the rubbish teams that represented England last night, losing to a team from the Farmers League. I mean, they were great goals. I will say that. The goals that Lons scored last night against Arsenal were quality. And that striker who scored the winner, Wahi, I think is his name. I know off the pitch there's some dodgy things that happened
we were
with
looking
him,
at him.
but
we were looking at him.
On the pitch, I think he's quality. I genuinely think, when you look at the way he took that goal yesterday, first time, ball's going across, we see strikers miss-hit those all the time, and he hit it perfectly into the corner. That is not something you can teach. I genuinely think he's going to be a really good. Talk about footballers. We don't need to do that, but it's nice to see that English teams. Hopefully, Villa will win tomorrow. Sorry, Gibbo. Hopefully, Brighton will win tomorrow, because we want English teams to do well because it might help Spurs. Apart from Arsenal, they can lose every game.
Yeah, just look.
Absolutely. All right then, guys. Well, next show then, Friday night, preview show for Luton. I'm not sure who's on. Do we know who's on yet, Gibbo, Friday?
I believe we've got Davo on. Obviously, the caller will be hosting, unless he's ill again. I'm not 100% sure, mate. Maybe JP. Let me have a look. See if I can...
I think. Friday is usually good for the Australians.
Yeah. But... I mean, keep an eye on the socials. That's what we want people to do. Craig, we want Friday. We got Stu Gallop, Davo, caller, and I think one more will be named soon. Good. So keep an eye on the socials.
Good. Yeah, it's going to be a good week, and let's hope when we're on next Wednesday, we're talking about a record-breaking start for Tottenham Hotspur in the Premier League, or not.
Yeah,
it's gonna.
Look.
Having seen that we're going to be playing in our third kit, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I'm nervous. That third kit has meant bad juju this season. I don't need more of it.
Yeah, we just need to manifest good thoughts.
Yeah, if we're worried about what kit we're playing and we're in the wrong game, aren't we? It shouldn't really matter what we've got on our.
We're Spurs fans. We will worry about everything. You know this. So, if we don't beat Luton, no one will want to see that third kit again. Genuinely, we'll be like, no, that blue kit, we win in that. We don't lose in that. That we don't want to play in the whatever colour that is, taupe.
I'm fully expecting us to win.
I'm fully expecting us to go 1-0 down. What happens from there, I don't know, but I fully expect us to go 1-0 down. All right, then, guys. Well, the last thing to say is see you all next week and up the Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Yeah, come on, you Spurs. Thanks for watching, guys.